Hello everybody, it's Oliver G here with the Earful Tower podcast. And Q, let's just get straight into it. Q is for Queer Paris. It should come as absolutely no surprise to anyone that this is a gay-friendly podcast. After all, this is Gay Paris. It's a gay-friendly city, and I figured, even though I've done it before, I figured this was a really good chance to delve into Gay Paris, Queer Paris, LGBTQIA plus Paris, and who better to do it with than a handful of people who live in that very world. So what you're about to hear is a big mix. It's a mix of interviews with experts. It's a mix of me walking down the streets, me going into gay cafes, gay bookshops, talking to the people inside, and trying to understand a little bit about the changing face of Queer Paris, particularly how it seems to be on the move from the Marais. Now, an episode like this wouldn't be an episode like this without music from Press Maxon, and he's hit the ball out of the park on this one. Not only is it a great song that I love, by a band that I love, but the band has a letter Q in it too, and a connection to queer. We got Christine and the Queens, and we'll hear more from Prez at the end of the episode, but I know he dusted off the old synthesizer for this one. Take it away, Prez, and welcome to the Queerful Tower. My name's Oliver G, and let's get into this AB Season Q episode. So this episode was going to start with Brian Paroli from the Gay Locals, who was last on the show about 5 years ago. But first, actually, I did in reverse. I went out to the gay quarter of Paris and had a look. So rug up warm, it was a bit cold on the day that I recorded this, and explore gay Paris with me to begin the episode. Okay, folks, so this podcast episode begins out on the streets, specifically on Rue de la Verrerie. Hard to pronounce, hard to find, in the middle of the Marais. And the reason I want to start out on the street is because when it comes to queer Paris, gay Paris, and the gay neighborhood, I don't actually know so much about it. In fact, I even walk through it on my own walking tours of Paris and the Marais especially, and I say, this is the gay quarter. But then I don't really say much after that. So what I figured is we'd start with a couple of minutes of me walking down the street and actually looking in these colorful rainbow shops, like the one I'm standing out the front, to discover this particular ice cream shop I'm looking in with big rainbow ice cream out the side. Doesn't appear to be an ice cream shop at all. Quetzal with a Q. With a Q! Quetzal is a club. That's a bar. I don't think they sell ice cream at all. I'm looking through the window on a cold and rainy morning. It actually appears to be a nightclub, and I heard about this one. So there you go. Parfum Fierté, which means the flavor of pride. Well, like I said, given it's morning, they're not open for clubbing or for ice cream, but that starts our journey as we walk towards the BHV. And one thing that I actually do point out when I'm walking through this part of town is there's an Invader up on the wall around here somewhere. An Invader we've talked about before. It's the artist who does the mosaic tiles. And around here somewhere, I think it's one street down past the BHV, he's done one that's multicolored, rainbow colored in the background. I often tell people that when you find an Invader, or a lot of these kind of street arts around Paris, you'll see that there's some kind of connection to the area, and it can be a little fun guessing game. So in that case, it's the rainbow for pride. And in front of me now in the middle of the road is one of these rainbow crosswalks, but it's very faded through time. In fact, it's almost missable. I'll take a picture of it, but this is sort of leading in right by the BHV on probably the most colorful street in Paris, Rue des Archives, which, as far as I've always been concerned, is or was the heart of the gay quarter. I think we'll learn a bit differently from that in a moment. But just standing here and looking around, up on the actual street sign, Rue des Archives, someone's put a newer version of it over the top of the old one, where in the background they've got the rainbow flag. And over on the right-hand side, heading north, is this multicolored flags hanging over a couple of cafes, and must be about 30 or 40 multicolor umbrellas open, hanging above. Now, what's the story with these 2 or 3 or 4 cafes? Are they gay cafes? What is the gay cafe? I don't even know. Maybe I should ask. Let's have a look. This one's called Le Jus. J-U. Bonjour. Do you speak English?
Yes, sir.
Do you work here?
Yes.
I'm just recording something for a podcast episode. Non, je fais un podcast au sujet de Paris. Vous avez 1 minute? C'est juste au sujet de Gay Paris.
Yeah, if you would like.
And okay, I'm really curious. Hello, what's your name?
Boris.
Boris. I see there's all these rainbow umbrellas.
Yeah.
Does that mean this is a gay cafe? What does it mean?
Yeah, it means it's like a gay cafe. The Marais is the gay area since the 18th.
Since the 18th, what, century?
No, 80.
Since the 80s?
Since the 80s. And a lot of shops in the 2000 just opened, and the Marais just going to the death.
Okay.
And yeah, this is to remind we are in the gay area, like you can see at the when you cross the street.
I just saw the crossings are rainbow.
Yeah,
but what does it mean? Are you guys open for everybody? Is it mostly for gay people, or who can eat here?
Everyone. The LGBT community is it's a big family, and the community is open to receive everyone.
Cool.
So that's why we make the difference. It's not a kind of difference, but everyone is welcoming to our place. Straight or gays or lesbian or queer or non-binaire or everyone.
And I must say congratulations on having the most colorful cafe entrance in all of Paris.
Thank you.
It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day, Boris, and thanks
You
for
too.
And how do you pronounce it? Is Le Jus? What does that mean?
Le Jus is like the half of a name of Julien,
Okay.
the boss of the restaurant.
Okay. And is there anything different about the cafe, or is it just like a totally normal cafe?
It's a totally normal cafe, just the waiters and the managers. We prefer to keep it gays, but we are welcoming. Everyone is welcoming too, but we prefer to make a safe place for everyone. If they found something difficult in their life, to make to put sunshines in every life if it's possible.
Sunshine and rainbows. Thanks so much for your time, Boris.
For sure.
Thank
It's
you.
been a good day.
So next to them is another bar, another cafe bar that's full of pink. I talked to the guys quickly off the microphone, and that was just for breast cancer awareness. He said if you want a gay bar, go across the street, where I'm standing out the front now, of Cafe Cox, C-O-X. And I can look in. Once again, it's in the morning. Doesn't look any different from any kind of normal bar to me, but I've heard that this place is pretty fun. I've got some more recommendations at the end that I've gathered. Now, as we walk a little further along Archives, I see another rainbow-colored street sign at the top. Not official, looks like someone's plugged it over the top. And then there's a lot of street art that's very much multicolor rainbow flag. But in terms of official, it's here on the corner of Rue des Archives and Rue Sainte-Croix de la Bretonnerie. Hard to say, Bretonnerie, where every single side of the crosswalks are covered in fairly freshly painted rainbow colors. However, if you're to continue in any direction from here, I'm standing in the middle of the road now. It doesn't appear from here that there's anything especially queer in any direction. So I think it's time we ask an expert for some actual information about the gay quarter, what to find and what it all means. So I turned to Brian Paroli from the Gay Locals, who's been on the show before, and I asked him for some help. Here's what he said.
This is Brian Paroli, owner of The Gay Locals, the only LGBTQ plus walking tour company in Paris. Hey Oliver, it's been 5 years since we chatted, and the queer scene in Paris has, of course, changed a whole lot. What you need to know is that the Marais, the latest hub of gay culture since the 1970s, has really become a shell of what it once was. Walking around the Marais along Rue des Archives, you'll see a few gay bars and rainbow flags, but most notable places have closed. The big gay bakery, Le Gay Choc, closed in 2020, and the iconic Open Cafe closed in 2022. The neighborhood has gone way past gentrification, making it almost impossible to maintain the divey little bars and local shops that once made it so cool and colorful. The problem is, it hasn't really moved anywhere else. But then again, times are changing, and with so much more acceptance in the world, you can argue whether or not we still need a visible gay neighborhood. Although I argue we still do. But don't worry. You can still buy the phallic-shaped baguettes at the smaller version of Le Gay Choc on Rue Rambuteau. And then bars like Quetzal, Cox Bar, and Free DJ still exist for some decent nightlife. For now, at least. You can go beyond the over-touristed Marais to find glimpses into Paris's queer culture. One of the mainstays is the bookshop, Les Mots à la Bouche, that still carries a torch for the community in a new location just outside the Marais. The Upper Marais has also gone super trendy, but you can support LGBTQ plus businesses by getting coffee at Recto Verso, for example, even if there's nothing overtly gay about their coffee. What's amazing about Paris is that there is a little queer history around every corner, like at Place des Vosges. I always tell people to visit because, well, it's just pretty. There's nothing too gay about that. But the statue of Louis XIII in the center offers a talking point on queer history. Critics used to call him Louis the Chaste because he never took any mistresses. So of course he had to be gay, right? These accusations undercut his power, and we see the same sorts of attempts to undermine countless monarchs throughout French history, including Marie Antoinette. Louis XIII, though, actually just really loved his wife. Well, allegedly. This is what we do with our tour company, The Gay Locals, that I started in 2015. We look at history through a queer lens to tell those stories that aren't often told. Paris is a little odd in that there aren't major LGBTQ+ or HIV/AIDS memorials like in other cities. In 2014, the city did create a plaque on the ground on Rue Montorgueil, dedicated to the last 2 gay men to be burned to death way back in 1750. You should definitely visit the Hotel de Ville as well to see where those executions took place. At least it was, well, a pretty backdrop. Despite their horrific deaths, it is uplifting to know that it was the last time it happened, because France became the first Western nation to decriminalize homosexuality during the French Revolution at the end of the 18th century. That's some pretty cool stuff. A newer memorial on the 10th, not far from the Marais, commemorates Clou Vallée, an AIDS activist and the president of ACT UP, who worked in a building on Rue René Boulanger. The new plaque went up recently in 2019, but it still sort of pales in comparison to what other cities have done to commemorate the fight against this epidemic. But it's better than nothing. Paris has played with rainbow crosswalks and street signs in the Marais, helping to boost LGBTQ+ visibility. But a lot of them are fading. But hey, this is a culture of contrasts. You know that. Some French feel that being queer is a private issue that doesn't need fanfare, while others argue that visibility is key to ensuring equality, especially with some conservative politicians still fighting to remove marriage equality, established 10 years ago in 2013. Becoming invisible is the first step toward losing what those who came before us fought for. So it's important to keep seeing rainbows in Paris, whether it's in the Marais or beyond.
So there you go. That was the voice of Brian Paroli, once again the owner of the Gay Locals, the only LGBTQ plus walking tour company in Paris. You can find more info about him in the show notes. I got talking to him after this recording, and I went back and listened to parts of our first recording where he said he'd done 11 marathons. It's up to 13 now. The guy doesn't stop. 13 marathons, Brian Paroli. Thanks for being on the show. Now, after hearing what he had to say, I went and checked out some of his tips, and Le Gay Choc on Rue Rambuteau. It's a funny one, because I remember the old shop, and they had these massive phallic baguettes in the window, and it was quite fun, and kind of naughty fun, whereas the new one seems quite tame in comparison. It felt like a typical bakery that had a few penis-shaped pastries. I don't know, seemed like a bit of a gimmick, and when I was in there, they didn't even seem very keen to talk about it. So make up your mind. Rue Rambuteau is a lovely walk anyway, but now you know if you want to get your phallic baguettes, where to go. Also, I was curious about what Brian said there about the bookshop. I remember passing that bookshop when it was in the Marais, so I thought I'd get on my bike and head over to the trendy 11th arrondissement to find Les Mots à la Bouche, the bookshop. What is a gay bookshop or a queer bookshop? What's inside it? I was curious, is it the kind of place where gay writers have books about anything? Or is it the kind of place where straight writers who've written about gay things have their books? Or what? How do you find out? Well, the answer's easy. You go in, and you talk to someone that works there, and you buy a book. So that's what you're about to hear. You're about to hear me talking to Nicolas Wanstek, with whom I sat in the back office and discussed gay literature and a gay bookshop in the 11th arrondissement. Here we go. So Nicolas, my first question, queer literature in French, is it a popular subject?
So here, of course, because we are a queer bookstore, so that's what we deal with every day. That's why people come to us. So yeah, and you might call it queer literature, but maybe not all the author will agree to do some queer literature, even if we put them in that section, because you have to, there are different lesbian literatures, different gay literatures, different trans literature, but yeah, it might be easier to call that queer, but queer has so many definitions that not everyone in the community agree with what it is.
That makes it really difficult to have, what's the rules of it? What is it? Do you call yourself a queer bookshop? What do you call it?
Usually in French we say LGBTQI plus bookstore, so LGBTQI plus bookstore, to try not to forget anyone from the community. And because queer is tricky, because it was an insult, so some people, use the insult for themselves to kind of protest and say, yeah, I'm queer, I'm here. But not everyone is, really at ease with using this insult, calling themselves. So, and some people use it just to say not straight.
Right.
So in that definition, that works for everyone in the community, but for some of us, not really, because of the insult thing.
Well, that's why I'm here, is to learn, and I don't think I've ever been in such a bookshop as this one, so I'm excited to understand more. But as I understand, you guys were in the Marais before, which was the gay quarter, and maybe not so much anymore. Why did you leave?
We left just because the owner pushed us aside just to make more money, because it used to be like a very poor neighborhood, like at the beginning of the 80s when we entered the neighborhood, and now it's one of the richest neighborhoods of Paris. So we couldn't stay there, so we searched for another location, and we found it like 3 years ago in the 11th district near République.
It's interesting to me because the 11th is kind of maybe what the Marais used to be like in terms of a little bit more accessible for everybody. Maybe this is the next Marais here.
That's what we hope, and it is exactly the case. It looks like a village, like many people. There is a lot of inhabitants here, and like everyone knows each other. Not exactly, but you see what I mean. So yeah, it definitely looks like what the Marais used to be. And there are a lot of queer people in this neighborhood because it's not so far from the center and the bars and the clubs who stayed in the Marais, but it's more affordable here.
We've got I want to talk about books. You've got a couple of books here, but first, like, if there's a gay man writes a book about cooking, would you stock that book here?
That's a tricky question. We put the focus more on the representations of homosexuality, trans identity, and so on. So it's more about the character in the stories. Because what we lacked for so many years is character looking like us. So we pay attention to a gay writer, queer writer, writing about something else than our topics, but it's more about the characters in the stories.
Got it. So I imagine Giovanni's Room by Baldwin has to be one of the popular books that English people come in here to get.
Yes, that's the case in French and in English, because it's an absolute classic of gay literature since it was written, and he wrote it in France. So he was like already a very strong militant for the black community, but he had to come to France far from the United States to be able to write about his own homosexuality.
Did you read it in English or French?
I read it in French.
I'm
sorry. I'm sorry.
What about, I'm sure there are people listening around the world who are thinking, what about French men and women who've written gay literature? What should I read, especially if it's been translated to English? Do you have some recommendations?
Yes, I have. The only thing is there is so few French books and French queer books translated into English, so you won't have like a large choice. But you could start with Hervé Guibert. He was a gay writer, a gay French writer. He was the first one writing about the AIDS crisis and about his fight against the disease. So the most famous one in France is Fou de Vincent, and I think it's been translated, it's called Crazy About Vincent. So it's a love story written from the end to the beginning by small fragments. It's very nice.
Okay.
It's also very sexual, so you have to be prepared, but it's a very, very good book and an important one in France. And you could also read Guillaume Dustan, because it's been translated to English very recently.
I can see one. Is that the one that... There you go.
So that's the one.
Is that all his works there in one?
I think it's his 3 first novels.
Okay.
So
In My Room, I'm Going Out Tonight, and Stronger Than Me.
Yeah, so that's his 3 third novels. So that was a bit later than Hervé Guibert, at the end of the 90s. And his project was to write about the gay community from his point of view and to be very brutally honest about it. So the sex, the drugs, the clubs.
Yeah.
And it's very fun. It's very oral language, like he writes a bit like you talk.
Well, you mentioned sex, and when I look at the back of it, this is what it says. Sex, 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 sex. Full stop.
Yeah, it's a lot about sex.
And then you got another one here by
Abdelataya. Yeah, that's more recent. That's the, I think, 2005, something like this. So he's from Morocco, and he moved to first Switzerland, then France. And he, a bit like Baldwin, he had to be in another country to write about himself, because it was not easy there. And An Arab Melancholia, it's the story of his journey from Morocco to Europe. So about a young gay Arab guy trying to find himself and his own identity. And it's very powerful.
What about, I have two more questions. I know you're a busy man. First question is, as a straight Australian man myself, which book should I read to open my eyes and learn about a different world?
You mean amongst these books?
Among those three, or anything that you've got?
Oh, Baldwin is very, Giovanni's Room.
Oh, I've read that one.
Okay, already.
Next? My eyes are open a bit.
Yeah, so... Dustan definitely will open some horizons.
Okay, cool.
Definitely. And maybe like an essay from Jack Halberstam. He's a professor in the United States, and he writings about trans topics. And he wrote a book called The Queer Art of Failure.
Okay.
And that's very, very interesting about gender, queer topics, trans issues from now. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this one.
Perfect. The last question I had, the name of the bookshop. Can you repeat it again?
It's Les mots à la bouche. So it's a trick of words, because when the shop started, it was also like a small coffee shop. So you could eat there. So it literally means the words in the mouth, because they tried to, mix like about eating and about literature. So you can't really translate it, but it sounds right.
Jeu de mots, wordplay. I love it. Great. Yeah. Well, for the tourists and people around the world listening, straight and gay, is this an open shop for everyone to come into?
Yeah, definitely. That's the idea of the place. Like, everyone is welcomed.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Thanks so much for your time, Nicolas. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So there you have it. Thank you, Nicolas, for your time. And I'm interested to see where that book takes me. I bought another book, the collected poems of Rimbaud, the famous French poet, which incidentally remind me awfully much of Bob Dylan, some of the things. Also, raised both my eyebrows at once sometimes. Some of that stuff is pretty graphic, Rimbaud. I'll let you guys figure out. I'll link something in the show notes if you want. But talking about gay literature, that's about as graphic gay literature as I've ever read. Who knows? Maybe I'm about to read some more with that other book I got. Let's see. The other thing is, I know there are an awful lot of gay listeners to the Eiffel Tower, and I talked to some of them about Gay Paris as well, things to do, things to find. And I got a bunch of notes here, so I'm going to read a bit of it out. The most fun bar, according to one listener, is Raid, R-A-I-D-D, where men take their showers in booths. I looked up their website online. I think I went there once, and it was pretty wild. It was unlike anything I've seen before. And I checked out their website now, and they say that there's a very good chance you'll get wet in there. And I looked through some pictures, and it seems pretty graphic as well. So there you go. That's the most fun bar, if that's what you're looking for. The drag scene. There are drag shows and drag bingos, which are super popular now due to the TV show in France on France 2, the channel, called Drag Race. In fact, there's a few people who've told me that I should interview the host of that show, and I tried, but I think she is very busy. There's also the Centre Gay and Lesbian, Centre Gay et Lesbienne, which is a cultural info center. They offer exhibitions and counseling for gay migrants and asylum seekers. The LGBT movie festival takes place in November each year in various MK2 theaters. The Pride March, the last Saturday in June, assembles over 1 million people on the streets of Paris. I actually walked in it last year, or this year, straight down to the Bastille and up towards Republic. I just jumped in for a while with my family. What a lovely vibe that was. Gay marriage and civil union are legal, and since a year ago, lesbian couples can legally get inseminated by sperm donors and legally be parents, both of them. No surrogacy for gay men yet. And then one more note here that says you probably shouldn't mention it, but I'm gonna. There are many sex places as well, including bathhouses and sex bars, and they're quite easy to find. There you go. So there's some inside information for anyone who is looking for it.
And if you're not gay at all, if you're straight and you just wanted to be a bit educated, then hopefully you learned something, because I certainly did today. Let's end on a note from Press Maxon with that thumping song this week. Great, Christine and the Queens. I've had it stuck in my head since, I think it came out right when I moved to Paris, this very song. So I remember it always being on the radio. But let's hear what Press has to say. For this week's song, I dare you to find a catchier earworm in French pop from the last decade. Christine and the Queens, that's Queens with a Q, was born in Nantes as Héloïse Adélaïde Létissier. Has been a favorite of mine in playlists since I saw them on The Tonight Show 7 years ago this week. I really wanted to find a way to put this song in our Paris Countdown season, but it works really well here instead. In addition to making fantastic music, Christine and the Queens has been a very visible member of the queer community in both music circles as well as social circles. For this track, I got to go crazy with synthesizers, which is a rarity. And I had fun with the challenge. There's an English version of the song called Tilted, but I prefer the French version called Christine. Enjoy! Funny that you say that, Press, because I also prefer the French version of the song. The Tilted one in English, it feels like, I was thinking about it this week, it feels like too many words were thrown together. Like it felt like for me, it didn't have the same flow. The French one also felt like there were too many words, but it worked. But listen to them both, Tilted and Christine, or just listen to Press's version, which I particularly like, especially the sound. I can't do it. Press can do it. All right. Thank you very much, Press Maxon, our maestro. Incidentally, his music was playing all night long at the members-only event that I hosted just last week on Thursday night. And funnily enough, it's very funny, I thought, that we had a full house, because it means I didn't talk about it publicly. You know, the idea with these events is I promote it within the Patreon member community, and then usually I promote it publicly in the hope of attracting some new members. But this one, the place is filled up instantaneously. And why it's kind of funny for me is I remember when I first started doing member events online for this show. I'm talking 5 or 6 years ago, and I said I'm doing a live video. Everyone around the world, you can watch at 6 p.m. And often just one person would show up. And I remember thinking, God, how am I going to grow this thing so at least a handful of people around the world can watch at the same time? And now I can offer an event in Paris, and 40 people say yes immediately. So that was awesome. The event was at the Gin Distillery in the Viaduc des Arts, the old viaduct. And gin, charcuterie, and andouillettes were on hand for the brave people. If you don't know what it is, look it up. Stinky meat. Not recommended for everybody. But also really nice to meet all the members who were in town. We'll do more events in the future. It's a great way of meeting like-minded Francophiles. So if you're interested in that, become a member. Keep your eyes open. There are also loads of bonus features, including the new guide to Paris, which me and my brother Eddie have been working double time on in recent days, weeks, maybe months. It'll be full of all the new stuff that I've featured in the past year of podcasting. Anyhow, that'll do for now. This has been the letter Q as part of the AB season, talking about Queer Paris. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back again with more next week. Merci beaucoup to everybody, and au revoir.